Chapter 1: The Breath Between Pines. In a fold between the northern mountains of Japan, veiled in mist and tall cedar trees, lay a village that did not exist on most maps. Its name was Tsukimori, which meant Forest of the Moon, and true to its name, the village seemed most alive beneath the light of the moon, when the trees whispered to each other and the wind carried stories from long ago. Tsukimori was a place forgotten by time. Its roads were cobbled with smooth river stones, and lanterns hung from bent wooden posts that leaned slightly as though bowing to passers-by. Houses were built of aged wood and moss-covered roofs, and every home had a small shrine outside, decorated with charms and faded bells. The villagers believed these kept the mountain spirits content. At the center of Tsukimori stood an ancient tree called Kazamori, the wind tree. Its trunk was wide enough to cradle a small house, and its branches spread like arms to the sky, thick with pale green leaves that rustled even when there was no breeze. It was said that Kazamori held the breath of the mountain, the spirit of the wind itself. Here, in this village of forgotten seasons, lived 3 children who would soon find their lives changed by things they could not yet name. The eldest was Yui, 12 years old and always carrying a notebook full of pressed flowers and scrawled observations. She had wide, intelligent eyes and hair the color of chestnuts, always braided tightly. Yui was quiet and often seemed older than she was, because she listened more than she spoke. Her father, a clockmaker, had gone missing during a storm 5 years ago. Since then, she had taken to fixing things, broken toys, birdhouses, and sometimes the sadness in others. Her younger brother, Haru, was 8 and could never sit still. His dark hair always stuck up in tufts, as if he'd just tumbled out of a bush, which he often had. Haru loved climbing trees and talking to animals, convinced that they understood him. He had a talent for noticing things others missed, a strange footprint, a shadow moving against the wind, or a small breeze where none should be. Then there was Natsu, Yui's best friend. Natsu was 11, a dreamer with mismatched socks and pockets always full of shiny pebbles and bent coins. He lived with his grandfather, a retired train conductor, in a house filled with clocks that all chimed at once. Natsu often spoke of trains that traveled the sky and birds made of starlight. Many thought he made things up, but Yui knew better. One humid summer evening, as the cicadas buzzed their shrill lullabies and the sun dipped behind the mountains, something stirred in Tsukimori. A wind, cool and fragrant with pine, swept through the village. It brushed the children's cheeks as they sat near the Kazumuri tree, trying to build a kite from newspaper and bamboo. "Did you feel that?" Haru asked, eyes wide. "It's just the wind," Yui said, though her fingers paused over the string. "No," Natsu whispered, sitting up straight. "It's him." Yui raised an eyebrow. "Ooh." Natsu pointed upward. And there, dancing between the branches, was a shimmer, a ripple in the air like heat over stone. Then it formed a shape, a face without a body, soft and swirling like cloud and smoke. Its eyes were 2 pale moons. The children froze. The figure looked at them, or through them, and then vanished with a sighing breeze that stirred the grass. "The wind spirit," Natsu breathed. Yui closed her notebook slowly. That night, strange things began to happen. The bells on the shrines tinkled, though the air was still. Doors creaked open. Children dreamed of flying creatures and whispering winds. And in the forest path beyond the village, the cat bus, a feline creature as large as a van, with glowing eyes and seats in its furry belly, sat purring among the shadows. It had not been seen in Tsukimori for generations. The next morning, the village woke to news that old Ubawayama, the herbalist who lived near the falls, was gone. Her house was intact, her kettle still warm, but she had vanished as if carried off by the wind. Only Yui, Haru, and Natsu noticed the pine needles scattered in a perfect spiral on her doorstep. A sign, the old story said, of the wind spirit's passage. Yui felt it in her chest, a pull, a beckoning. Her father had disappeared during a windstorm, just like this. She remembered the day well. The trees had bent low, and the wind had howled like a voice calling his name. Now it was happening again, and as the children stood before Obayama's empty house, a low purring echoed through the woods behind them. They turned. There, tail flicking like a lazy pendulum, was the catbus. Its smile was too wide, its windows glowing amber in the morning light. It waited. For them. Chapter 2. The Vanishing Path. The catbus waited in silence. Its golden eyes shimmered in the morning light, and its thick fur rippled like tall grass in the wind. The doors along its side creaked open with a soft hiss, revealing a warm, glowing interior. Seats, shaped like cushions of moss and velvet, invited the children inside. Natsu stepped forward first, drawn by something deeper than curiosity. Yui hesitated, her fingers tightening around the strap of her satchel. Haru simply grinned and leapt up the steps, his muddy shoes leaving faint prints on the soft floor. Inside, it smelled of cedar and warm earth. As the doors slid closed behind them, the catbus let out a deep, contented purr. Then, without a jolt or sound, it began to move. Outside, the trees blurred, mountains bent gently out of its way, and rivers parted like fabric. They weren't riding through the world. The world itself seemed to shift to make room. "Where is it taking us?" Yui asked, pressing her fingers to the warm glass. Natsu tilted his head, listening. "I think we're going to the place where the wind sleeps." No one spoke after that. The catbus purred on. They arrived in a clearing unlike any they knew, a hidden glade surrounded by silver pines where the air shimmered with dew and the ground was soft as moss. Strange stones stood in rings, each carved with old kanji and swirling lines. In the center stood a low hut, half swallowed by roots and ivy, and before it sat a figure, not Obayama, but someone else. He was tall but hunched, with robes that looked like they were spun from fog. His face was lined but kind, his beard braided with feathers. His eyes were like clouds about to rain. "Welcome, children," he said, his voice a breeze through dry leaves. "I am Kaze no Tomo, friend of the wind." Haru stepped behind Yui. "You know why we're here?" she asked. He nodded slowly. "The wind stirs because it is restless. Someone has called it. Someone has taken what should not be taken." "Abayama?" Natsu asked. And others, the veil between our world and theirs is thinning. Kaze no Tomo stood and waved a hand. Come, there is something you must see. He led them to the edge of the glade, where the trees parted around a strange sight, a narrow, winding path made entirely of mist, suspended over a chasm. This is the vanishing path, Kaznotomo said. It appears only when the wind chooses. It leads to the threshold, the place where spirits cross between their realm and yours. Yui's heart beat faster. My father disappeared in a windstorm. Kaznotomo turned to her, solemn. I know, and I believe he may have crossed the threshold, though not by choice. Natsu's eyes widened. Then he could still be alive? The spirit friend nodded. But time flows differently beyond the veil. To reach him, you will need more than courage. He gave each child a charm. Yui's was a pendant with a tiny windmill that spun when she breathed on it. Haru received a pine cone that glowed faintly. Natsu's was a whistle carved from the branch of the Tsukimori tree. These will guide and protect you as long as you remain true. The mist path shimmered. Back in Tsukimori, the village was changing. More strange things were happening. Gusts of wind that knocked over lanterns, whispers at night, and animals acting skittish. Grandfather Junpei, the train conductor, claimed he saw shadows flitting across the rooftops. I swear by my old hat, he muttered, sipping tea. There's something stirring in the mountain. Obayama's house remained untouched. No one dared move her things, though the kettle had gone cold. The only ones who noticed the pine spiral had disappeared were the children, and Kaze no Tomo's words echoed in their minds. The veil is thinning. On the third night, the cat bus returned. This time, it wasn't waiting, it was searching. Its steps were light but urgent, and its windows flashed with strange symbols. When the children climbed aboard again, they were no longer just curious, they were ready. They passed through places not meant for humans, forests where the trees sang, tunnels where the wind laughed and tugged at their hair, and skies where clouds formed creatures with eyes like stars. And then, at last, the cat bus slowed. They had reached the edge of the threshold. It was not a door or a gate, but a moment in the air, like the silence before a storm. Shapes moved beyond it, tall beings with translucent skin, eyes like rain, hands that left trails of blossoms as they walked. This is where your journey truly begins. Kaze no Tomo's voice echoed in their minds, though he was not there. Yui stepped forward first, her pendant spinning wildly. As she crossed, the world changed. The sky turned lavender. The air was thick with the scent of plum blossoms and storm. Sounds were softer, like they came from far away. The children had entered a place between waking and dreaming, the spirit realm. Here, the rules were different. They wandered through a village that mirrored Tsukimori, but was covered in silver moss. No one lived here anymore, or perhaps they had never lived at all. Shadows passed behind paper walls. Bells chimed, though there was no wind. And then a figure appeared. It was Obayama, or something that looked like her. Her eyes were clouded, her hair moving as if underwater. She spoke no words, but raised a hand and pointed to a narrow shrine in the distance. Yui approached her, heart aching. "Are you real?" The spirit smiled faintly. Follow the wind, it remembers." Then she was gone. The shrine was small and overgrown, but inside was a mural painted in soft strokes, a story of the wind spirit's origin. It showed a child lost in the mountains, saved by a breeze that carried them home. "A child," Haru whispered, "like us." There was more. The mural showed people offering gifts to the wind, and the wind offering dreams in return. But then, a final image, someone stealing the wind's core, a glowing orb, and the mountains turning to ash. Yui stepped back. Someone took the heart of the wind. "That's what's causing the vanishings," Natsu said. "The wind is searching for itself." They turned, and there, waiting behind them, was the cat bus, but it looked different. Its eyes were dimmer, its fur singed at the edges, and riding on its back was a creature none of them had seen before. Tall and thin, draped in rags of sky-colored silk, its face hidden behind a porcelain mask, shaped like a gust of wind. It tilted its head, and the wind howled through the shrine. The masked figure raised a hand, and a swirl of air lifted the children into the cat bus once more. The journey continued, now deeper into the spirit realm, toward the place where the wind had hidden its heart, and someone else was already looking for it. Someone who didn't want the wind to be whole again. In the world they had left behind, the villagers of Tsukimori lit lanterns and whispered prayers to the trees. Grandfather Junpei stood alone by the Kazamori tree, eyes closed. "Come home safe, little ones," he said to the wind. The Kappas moved like a whisper through the dream-thick realm, carrying the children deeper into the unseen layers of the world. Trees floated sideways and rivers flowed uphill. A flock of glass-winged birds shimmered past, leaving trails of music behind them. Yet, despite the wonder, something in the air was heavy. The wind, once gentle, had become restless. Inside the Kappas, Yui sat quietly, her eyes scanning the scenery for patterns, symbols, anything that might lead them closer to the wind's heart. Haru leaned against the soft fir wall, fidgeting with a glowing pine cone. Natsu, though, was unusually quiet. He clutched the wind whistle tightly in his hand, staring into the shifting mist. "Are you okay?" Yui asked him gently. Natsu didn't answer at first, then he looked at her, his eyes strange, distant, like he was listening to something only he could hear. "I remember this place," he said finally. "But we've never been here," Haru said, sitting up. Nat's voice dropped to a whisper. "I think I have." Before anyone could ask what he meant, the cat bus stopped. They had arrived at a stone bridge spanning a chasm filled with clouds. On the other side, a lone figure stood waiting. The same masked being they had seen before, tall and draped in tattered sky silk. But this time, it did not hide in silence. It raised a hand, and the wind surged. The cat bus groaned, backing away. "You must go on foot," it rumbled softly. Ears flattened. Yui stepped down first. Haru followed, holding Yui's hand tighter than he would ever admit. Natsu hesitated. The masked spirit stepped aside, allowing them to pass. And as they crossed the bridge, a new sound met their ears. Laughter. Beyond the bridge lay a village, familiar yet dreamlike. It was Tsukimori, but as it might have been long ago. The buildings were untouched by time, and cherry trees bloomed in every corner. Lanterns glowed with captured sunlight. The air smelled of childhood summers. Children played in the street. One of them looked up, a boy with a wide grin, racing the wind. Yui gasped. "That's Natsu." The real Natsu stood frozen. As they watched, Dream Natsu stopped before a house with a tall man in a conductor's uniform. Grandfather Junpei, younger, healthier, laughing. "I don't remember this," Natsu said, but his voice trembled. A door opened. A woman stepped out, her eyes like Natsu's. Her hair swept into a neat braid. "Your mother," Yui whispered. Natsu had never spoken of her, only of his grandfather. She had disappeared when he was very young, people said, vanished like the wind. Suddenly the dream froze, and the masked spirit stepped forward. It raised its hands and pulled back the porcelain mask. Beneath it was a woman's face, older, beautiful, and sad. Her eyes were Natsu's. "Mom?" the wind howled. She did not speak. Instead, images formed in the air around them, memories carried by the wind. A young woman walking the forest paths, singing lullabies. A storm, a shrine, hidden deep in the mountains. The wind choosing her, lifting her, carrying her across the veil. She had become part of the wind realm, not entirely human, not entirely spirit, but she had watched Natsu grow from afar, unable to return. "I didn't forget you," Natsu said, tears in his eyes. "I just didn't remember." She reached out, and the wind cradled his face. The moment was silent, sacred, and then it broke. A roar tore through the spirit village. The clouds above darkened. Trees shuddered. The wind twisted into sharp blades. Something else had found them. From the sky descended a new figure, a shadow made of broken feathers and stormlight. It was tall, hunched, faceless. The air turned electric with its presence. "The hollow wind," whispered Natsu's mother. "It hunts the heart." The children ran. The cat bus reappeared, bounding through the sky like a comet. The children leapt inside as the hollow wind screamed behind them. But even the cat bus was not fast enough. Tendrils of storm lashed out, striking the windows, making the glass ripple. Then something happened. Natsu raised the whistle to his lips and blew. The sound was barely audible, not a note, but a memory, a lullaby half remembered. The wind paused. The storm hesitated. And then the cat bus surged forward through a spiral of clouds, vanishing into the folds of the realm. When they next landed, the children found themselves at the base of the Kazamori tree, but in the spirit realm's mirror of it. The ancient tree was wounded, its bark split, leaves falling in slow motion. In its roots, nestled like a beating heart, was a glowing orb, the core of the wind. But it was cracked. Yui knelt beside it. "It's dying." Haru stepped forward, holding his pine cone. "Can we fix it?" Kazumitomo appeared from the shadows, his robes torn by wind. "Perhaps, but only someone the wind truly trusts can carry the heart." All eyes turned to Natsu. The boy stepped forward, holding his whistle. I'm afraid." Yui nodded. We all are, but you're not alone. Natsu touched the glowing core. A burst of wind swept through them, not fierce, but soft, familiar. A voice like his mother's whispered, "I have always been with you." The core pulsed, the crack began to seal, and the hollow wind roared in the distance, furious. They had mended the wind's heart, but the hollow wind was not done. As the cat bus prepared to return them home, Yui turned to Kaznotomo. "Why does it want the heart?" The spirit friend's eyes darkened. "Because long ago it was part of the wind, a spirit of sorrow and rage, cast out for causing storms. It has no home, only hunger." As they boarded the cat bus once more, Yui whispered to herself, "Then we'll give it something else to follow, a wind of hope." And the cat bus leapt into the sky, leaving the spirit realm behind. But deep in the clouds, the hollow wind circled, waiting. Chapter 4: The Echo of Silence. The cat bus surged through folds of air like a whisper lost in a dream, carrying its passengers back to the world they once knew, but nothing felt the same. Natsu sat near the front, cradling the newly mended wind's heart. It pulsed softly, like the beat of a bird's wings. Every few minutes it flickered with memories, a song, a breeze through an open window, a soft voice calling his name, his mother's voice. He hadn't spoken since they left the spirit realm. Yui watched him from her seat, worry tucked in the corners of her expression. Haru had curled into a sleepy pile on a fur-cushioned bench, the pine cone in his hand still glowing faintly. The cat bus slowed, purring lowly. They had returned to Tsukimori, or what remained of it. The village was not as they had left it. The wind here was wrong. The lanterns on the crooked posts were dim. The air hung heavy, unmoving. Trees no longer whispered. And the Kazamori tree stood utterly still, its branches frozen like statues in a forgotten dance. Villagers walked the streets, but their faces were blank, their eyes distant. "They don't see us," Haru whispered, standing at the edge of the road. "They don't hear us either," Yui said, waving a hand in front of a passing neighbor. It was as if the village had been caught in a moment of silence and could not escape. Then came the sound. Not a howl, but an absence, a vacuum. The hollow wind had been here. They hurried to the Kazamori tree. Its leaves had all fallen, and in the hollow where birds used to nest, a deep wound marred its trunk. It looked as though something had torn through it from the inside out. Yui touched the bark, cold. "The wind's heart is mended," she whispered, "but the world is not." Natsu stepped forward, the heart clutched to his chest. "Then we have to finish what we started." He looked to the sky. The clouds were low, heavy with silence. No birds flew, no insects chirped. Only the sound of their footsteps broke the stillness as they made their way to the old shrine near the edge of the village, the one long sealed with woven straw ropes and old talismans. It was older than the rest of Tsukimori, built before the village had a name. Yui pushed open the gate. Inside was darkness, thick, pressing, and in the center of the shrine a well, dry, cracked, ancient. From it, a breath escaped. It did not sound like wind. It sounded like someone sighing after centuries of grief. They approached the well. Natsu held out the wind's heart, and the darkness recoiled. Light bloomed from the orb, and then a roar. The hollow wind erupted from the well in a spiral of storm and fury. Its shape shifted wildly. A wolf made of fog, a hand made of crows, a face with too many eyes. It howled, but not with rage, with sorrow. It's mourning, Yui realized, stepping back. It doesn't want to destroy. It wants to be remembered. But the storm could not hear her. It lashed out, breaking the shrine's wooden pillars, scattering leaves and memory alike. Natsu stepped forward. "I know what you are," he said, voice rising above the wind. "You're the forgotten breath, the silence left behind when voices stopped singing." The hollow wind paused. "You were part of the wind once, but they locked you away, not because you were evil, but because they were afraid." The creature's form flickered, a child's silhouette, a weeping face, a single tear that became a cloud. Natsu held up the wind's heart. "You don't have to be alone anymore." For a moment, the storm quieted, and then a scream unlike any other, a final burst of sorrow. It surged forward. Yui leapt in front of Natsu, arms wide. A blast of wind struck her square in the chest, lifting her off her feet and slamming her into the shrine wall. "Yui," Haru shouted. She did not move. Natsu fell to his knees beside her, panic rising like a tide. "Please," he whispered to the wind, "please stop." And then it did. The hollow wind collapsed, swirling down into a form they had not yet seen, a small girl, no older than Yui, with long hair like threads of fog and eyes full of rain. "I didn't want to hurt her," the wind said softly. "I just didn't want to disappear." Natsu looked up, anger and grief in his eyes. "Then help us. Fix this." The girl wind nodded. She stepped to Yui and breathed gently over her chest. The leaves stirred, the Tsukimori tree sighed, and Yui opened her eyes. She gasped, sitting up. Natsu embraced her tightly, Haru crying beside them. The girl wind stepped back, her form flickering. "I'm fading," she said. "No," Yui said, standing slowly. "You don't have to vanish. You're part of the wind, so stay as wind, not forgotten, but free." She looked to Natsu. "Can the heart hold both?" Natsu nodded slowly. "If we let it." He held the orb aloft, and the girl reached out. Her form dissolved into a breeze, curling into the orb's light like a final lullaby. The wind's heart shimmered, a new pulse, and then silence. But this time it was peaceful. The wind returned to Tsukimori. Lanterns flickered back to life. Trees whispered once more. The Tsukimori tree bloomed with silver leaves that glistened like morning dew. The villagers stirred, faces brightened, laughter returned, and high in the sky, the cat bus purred as it bounded between clouds, watching over it all. That evening, Grandfather Junmei sat on the porch, polishing an old pocket watch. Yui, Haru, and Natsu sat beside him. "So," he said, "you brought the wind home." Natsu smiled faintly, not just the wind. Yui leaned against him, her chest still aching, but her heart light. Haru pointed to the tree. "Do you think it remembers everything now?" Yui nodded. The wind always remembers, and high above a breeze stirred, soft and warm, and carried their laughter through the pines. But deep in the folds of the mountains, where mist meets sky, something still lingered. A memory, a whisper, and the promise of another story waiting to be told. Chapter 5, Where the Wind Comes Home. Morning light spilled over the mountains like warm tea poured from the hands of the sun. Tsukimori stirred gently awake, the village stretching its limbs in soft winds and lazy birdsong. The stillness that once haunted its narrow paths had lifted, replaced by a breath that smelled of pine, wildflowers, and stories too old to name. The Tsukimori tree stood proud again. Its silver-tinted leaves shimmered with each passing breeze, and if one stood quietly enough beside it, they could hear it hum, a low, soothing melody carried on the wind. The villagers said it was the sound of gratitude, of memory made whole. Yui awoke to the smell of steamed rice and pickled plum. She stretched on her futon beneath the window, the wind teasing a strand of hair across her nose. The pendant on her neck, the tiny windmill, spun ever so slightly, catching the sun. Downstairs, Obashan bustled in the kitchen, humming a song that Yui's father used to whistle. "You're up early," she said with a smile, not turning from the stove. "I had a dream," Yui said, yawning. "We were flying." Obachan chuckled. "Maybe you were." Outside, Haru was already up, chasing butterflies with a paper net and laughing like nothing had ever been wrong with the world. He stopped occasionally to whisper to the trees. "I know you can hear me now," he told a willow. "No hiding." The willow shook as if in amusement. At the far edge of the village, Natsu sat by the railway tracks with his grandfather, polishing the whistle that had helped calm a storm. "He'd be proud of you," Junpei said, his voice as quiet as the breeze. "Your mother?" Natsu smiled, gaze distant. "She still is," he said, and somewhere high in the clouds, the cat bus passed overhead in a blur of fur and laughter, its windows glowing warmly. The children met that afternoon by the Tsukimori tree, as they always did. They brought onigiri wrapped in bamboo leaves and a jug of cool barley tea. The summer was easing toward autumn, and the wind had begun to taste of wood smoke and falling leaves. "It feels different now," Yui said. "It is different," Natsu said, "but I think it's still us." They sat in silence for a while, chewing and listening. "I keep thinking about her," Haru said suddenly. "The wind girl. Do you think she's still inside the wind's heart?" "I think she is the wind's heart," Yui said gently. "Not trapped, just at peace." Natsu nodded. She was lonely, but now she's part of everything again, part of us. Over the next weeks, Tsukimori began to bloom again in quiet ways. The old shrine, once cracked and crumbling, was slowly restored, not with stone and wood, but with offerings, little trinkets, drawings, wind chimes. Yui hung one she had made herself, shaped like a fox with wings. Grandfather Junpei reopened the village's forgotten train platform, even though no trains ran anymore, just in case, he said with a wink. At dusk, the wind sometimes carried music, a lullaby perhaps, or laughter that no one remembered making, but it always brought comfort. The cat bus didn't return often, but now and then someone would see it bounding over the mountains, ferrying passengers only it could see. The wind kept its secrets, but it shared its warmth. One day, a letter arrived. It was addressed in ink so pale it seemed written by moonlight. There was no sender. Yui opened it beneath the Tsukimori tree. Inside was a pressed plum blossom, a sketch of the spirit realm's silver village, and one line in flowing hand. When the wind remembers, the world is whole. She smiled and tucked the letter into her notebook. Autumn came with rustling leaves and long shadows. The children walked the forest paths again, now with baskets for mushrooms and hands ready to catch falling moments. Yui fixed the hinges on the old temple bell. Haru trained a squirrel to bring him acorns. Natsu wrote stories, not just about flying trains and wind spirits, but about boys who remembered their mothers and girls who stopped storms with kindness. One afternoon, they climbed to the tallest hill overlooking the valley. The wind blew strong there, and they let it carry their voices. "We're here," Haru shouted. "We remember," Yui added. Natsu held up the whistle and blew a single note. The wind answered, and for a moment, just a moment, they could swear they saw her again. The girl made of breeze and sorrow, smiling, dancing through the air. Then she was gone. Winter would come as it always did. Snow would fall and the wind would grow sharp, but Tsukimori would not forget. Its shrines would be warm with candlelight. Its children would dream of silver villages and trees that whispered lullabies. And high above, always moving, always watching, the cat bus would run beneath the stars. On the last day of summer, Yui wrote in her notebook, "There are winds that bring change, winds that bring memories, and winds that bring you home. We've ridden them all, and we're still here." She tucked a pressed windflower between the pages. Outside, the wind blew through the pines, soft, content, and the world was warm again, just as it should be.